What I've been asked to do is give concrete actions that people can take to try and stop this line. And so I'll start by saying, how many people have solar power on their house? How many people who have solar power on their house like having solar power on their house? Okay, good, good. Anyone who doesn't have solar power on their house should put solar power on their house, both as an act of independence, and it's good for your mental health when you're engaging in a fight of this type, because you're taking some kind of action where you're showing what you want the future to be. And you can do that independent of specific actions. And I have been engaged in these types of fights for a few years now, and this will be an uphill battle. However, if this line is stopped, it will be death by 1,000 duck bites. Is it just clipping away and slowing it down, slowing it down, slowing it down? And one of the things that bothers me about this particular situation, and I hadn't thought about this with the Badger Coulee line, is, and I did talk to Rob about this, and I would like to talk to Environmental Law and Policy Center about this. I've done work for a few years ago as an expert for them, and that is Dairyland Power Cooperative is the face of this project, and they're teamed with ATC, and Dairyland is a nonprofit electric cooperative with a pretty simple mission, which is to provide low-cost, reliable power to its membership. And yet, it's really wearing two hats. It's that hat, but it's also a partner in a private for-profit investment, which, by being a partner in that investment, has essentially telegraphed their vision of the future course they will take as a nonprofit electric co-op. That's typically called an affiliate transaction conflict of interest. You're engaged in an action. It's almost like a doctor who's prescribing a certain pill, even though that pill may not have anything to do with the disease a person's got. They just happen to make 10% on every pill that they sell. And so they're usually fiduciary responsibilities where you can't engage in an action, even as a nonprofit, especially as a nonprofit, that conflicts with your fundamental mission. And I haven't looked at this in detail, but I wouldn't see it as a member thing, not where a member says, look, board of Dairyland, I think you're stepping out of bounds. It would be an independent audit from an independent entity. I'm not sure how far it would go, but as part of a grassroots campaign effort, even initiating such an action to say, we want to understand how you feel that you have the authority to go forward on this type of deal, because you're essentially short-circuiting any opportunity for us to look at, be flexible, use new developments, and move in that direction. So anyway, I hadn't necessarily thought of it as a keynote thing to say, but to me, it is a concrete action around which you can mobilize a grassroots campaign to say these folks are stepping out of bounds and going where they shouldn't be going.
You might want to explain that the co-op, elaborate on the cheap electricity and the co-op structure, and that they're not a regulated.
Right, unlike with the investor-owned utilities, shareholder-based, they are regulated by the Public Service Commission. The co-ops are not. The municipal utilities are not. And so you don't go through the Public Service Commission to address them. You go straight at them. And in that they have foundational documents that say what they are and what they're supposed to be doing. If what they're doing isn't consistent with those foundational mission statements, then you have the basis to, just as any nonprofit who's strayed out of its mission, to take action. And even if it isn't a violation of the letter of the law, it could be a violation of a public trust, that you're just straying into an area that is compromising the good service to your customers, and that this should be addressed. And basically what I'm saying is find ways to go after the entities that are promoting the project. And Dairyland is an opportunity because they have taken on the responsibility of being the face of this project, just as they did with Badger Coulee. MISO is the Wizard of Oz. It's this big, multi-state, multi-country beast that has been seeded decision-making authority, where MISO says, it doesn't matter what the economics of this project are in this state. This is one project of 17 different projects. Collectively, they look good. We're doing this for renewable energy, even though every state that might receive the power already has reached their renewable energy targets, and there isn't any indication that these targets are going to be expanded anytime soon, such that it's a project, it's almost like build it and they will come. There is no need for it. There may never be a need for it, but we'll build it now just in case. And that is another, when you step back and you look at it, it's ridiculous. I mean, that's not a justification for even a $100 investment, much less billions of dollars of investment. And that, again, is, it may be hard to get a grasp on this, but attacking the legitimacy of MISO to be making this type of blanket assertion and having the PSC simply accept it or not challenge it, is that it gets back to the death by 1,000 duck bites. It's going after them, and as opposed to sitting passively back and then waiting to try and take all of the action at the PSC. It's important to participate fully at the PSC. The PSC is basically genuflecting to MISO. And so if no one is going after MISO, it's really leaving a pretty clear field. And so I'm sure this all sounds very hopeful. But there is a battle plan. I mean, it takes a lot of coordination. It takes using people that have been in the different aspects of the game. But I see this as it. We were looking at the information earlier today where the solar is dropped through the floorboards, and Pat had mentioned earlier that the projection from the Stanford professor that in 14 years, it's all going to be solar and batteries, and I think he's right. But and I also think Pat was right about why they're moving the schedule up, because this project is getting shakier. And so the more you can go after the source as it gets shakier, you will be able to slow it down. And eventually it can potentially die on the vine by that strategy. So I think it would be a great opportunity, because you even mentioned even more projects are coming down the pipeline. Like, this isn't it, amazingly, that with this saturation of the Midwest with these 345 kV lines, another wave is going to come. And what that tells me is that this overarching entity, MISO, serves no purpose that is good. And that this could be not only a relatively small piece of that much bigger puzzle to stop the line, but also to start a whole effort to undo these types of regional transmission operators. And a bigger context to me is we are living in an uncertain time. I mean, even compared to a couple of years ago. I mean, political changes in the country, lack of faith in institutions, which is both a crisis situation but an opportunity situation. It just seems as though everything's in play. And accepting an institution like MISO, for example, as permanent is in play. And it's a moment to take an opportunity and work it, because, go ahead.
I was just going to say, one of the things, Bill and I just started talking about this, but there's a distinction between, just a question to you, Bill, that are we really saying there's a distinction between the ISO's operation in terms of running the electricity market and, doing the day-ahead scheduling and the deregulated grid, and Midwest expansion planning, right? Transmission expansion planning, which is not done in PJM or ISO or any ISO. They have like a document that they kick out that they say, we don't have any need for any transmission lines. So it's not like you're going to your utilities and saying, we think, you don't necessarily politically at least have to say, we think that the electric market and all of that structure and stuff sucks. We're just saying that they're going way overboard when it comes to their, really is not expansion, planning, but just capital utility planning.
And just a final comment on this is the way to make the Wisconsin Public Service Commission proceeding more valid and more real and more potentially successful is to get the MISO pushed back and have the state of Wisconsin take over what it historically has, which is power of decision making over whether it goes forward or not. And the positive effect throughout the Midwest of a pushback on MISO here would be that folks in Missouri and Illinois and all these other states where they are getting flattened by MISO preempting the state's responsibility. I mean, in effect, it's a states' rights issue, but in a good states' rights way, whereas the state protecting the interests of its own citizens as opposed to allowing a much broader, less focused entity just dictate. It's going to be this way. And so really on that happy note, I think I'd like to wrap it up. But one thing that I must say is when Rob came out to meet me 4 years ago in San Diego, and he made the pitch, and I needed a pitch to come work on that project, I'm really glad I did, because for me in my own work, to meet with people who are affected and who are rising up to try and stop something like this is really, I mean, what makes you an American. I mean, it's like, I was born here and they said that, you know, it's the land of the free and the home of the brave and this is bad and I'm going to take it. And it just is, it's good. I mean, it cuts through all of the BS. And so I think that you keep going, get more people, you'll have support from people like me, and everything's in play right now. So it's a great time to be hitting back hard. Thank you.